two dates. Keep them both in your head. Everything else in this story flows from the space between them and from the question of what was happening in that space. March 14th, 2024. Meghan posts a black and white video to Instagram. She is picking flowers, stirring something on a stove. Soft, natural light. A cursive logo reading American Riviera Orchard, the launch of her lifestyle brand. Jam, honey, the whole curated California dream. May 3rd, 2024. The Attorney General of California declares the Archewell Foundation, the charity Meghan runs with Harry, delinquent and orders it to stop soliciting donations and stop spending money. 7 weeks apart. Same household. Same founders. One project getting every ounce of operational attention and commercial focus. The other bleeding out quietly while the attention was elsewhere, and nobody with formal authority to stop it was positioned to do so.
Growing scandal involving Prince Harry and his last remaining genuine charity project, the Invictus Games. But is it really a charity project at all? This is the very reason why everyone who originally worked on and set up Invictus no longer work.
Tonight we are going through the documents. Not the gossip, the actual paperwork, the California filing, the federal tax form with the box that should not have been checked, the CharityWatch letters that went unanswered across 2 years, the December 2025 restructure that came at exactly the wrong moment and disclosed exactly the wrong things, and the question that keeps emerging from the timeline when you lay all of it out side by side. While Harry's name was attached to every scandal and every headline, who was quietly building the exit? This is a story about governance, financial filings, and a pattern that is visible in the dates themselves without requiring any interpretive work. The documents are public. The dates are documented. The only thing required is reading them in sequence and asking what they show. Let's start with the board. You want to know who watches the money at the Archewell Foundation? Who is the independent oversight? The set of eyes at the table making sure the assets are protected, the funds are reaching the causes they are supposed to reach, and nobody is blurring the line between the charity's activities and the founder's commercial interests?
Has to go to Birmingham this summer. He has to drum up some sort of business because at this point, A, it's just embarrassing. And B, yes, government funds are supposed to cover about half, but the other half are supposed to come from private companies and private individuals, and nobody's dropping a dime anymore because they are also saying, how come this costs so much?
Two people, Meghan and Harry. That is the board. That is the complete governance structure of a foundation that was publicly raising millions of dollars. CharityWatch, the watchdog organization whose entire professional function is evaluating nonprofit governance and financial health, put this in writing. The foundation reports only 2 board members, a setup that falls well short of widely accepted nonprofit governance best practices. Let me translate that out of watchdog language. What CharityWatch is describing is a governance structure that does not meet the minimum standards that the nonprofit sector itself has established over decades of experience with organizations that went wrong. No independent trustee, no external voice, no one at that table who is not financially tied to the founders and operationally part of the same household. Think about what that structure actually means in practice when a decision needs to be made. If one board member wanted to redirect the organization's attention and energy toward a commercial brand launch for several months rather than running the charity's programmatic work, the only person who could raise a formal objection or call a vote is the other board member, who lives in the same house, who is married to the person making the decision. There is no independent governor to say no on behalf of the donors who gave their money to the charitable mission. It is structurally impossible for the foundation to overrule its own founders, because its own founders are the entire governance structure. That setup is manageable when everything is running well and the money is coming in. When the numbers start to move in the wrong direction, a 2-person board with no independent members is not a minor governance shortcoming.
Final traces of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the British royal family are being erased, and this is far more significant than just the destruction of their former home.
It is the thing that allows the other problems to accumulate without anyone at the institution being able to formally say, stop. If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, the like button is right there. It costs nothing, and it keeps the channel growing. Here are the 2024 numbers directly from the filing. Money in, $2.1 million. Money out, $5.1 million. That is a $3 million deficit in a single year. In the same year, the lifestyle brand was launching, selling out, and being covered everywhere as a success story. Go back further, and the trajectory is worse. In 2021, the charity raised $13 million. That was the goodwill year, the post-Oprah year, the year when the global sympathy wave around Harry and Meghan was at its peak and people were motivated to attach their charitable giving to something connected to them. $13 million in 1 year, then 2022, $2 million, then across the following 3 years combined, roughly $9.5 million total, less than the single-year peak from 2021. Donor enthusiasm did not decline gradually over time in the way that charities typically experience when the initial excitement around a new cause settles into a sustainable but lower level of giving. It collapsed from $13 million to $2 million in a single year and then did not recover. That is a specific signal. The people who gave in 2021 looked at what the organization was doing with their money in 2022 and decided not to give again. What was the money doing in the years when it was still coming in at meaningful levels? In 2023, Archewell raised over $5 million. Of that, approximately $1.3 million reached charitable causes directly. The remaining approximately $4 million was absorbed by staff costs, consultants, operational overhead, and what media analyst Brian Glicklick described with notable precision as the trips the couple took to Nigeria and Colombia. Glicklick's overall assessment of the foundation's purpose was specific and on the record. The public, he said, sees it as a self-serving publicity mechanism for the couple and a means of platforming other money-making ventures. That is not an anonymous tabloid source. That is a named professional giving his professional read of what the financial structure was actually doing. A platform for other money-making ventures. Hold that phrase. Subscribe to Palace Insider and tell us in the comments. Were you following the Archewell situation when these filings emerged? Now to the audit, because this is the detail that moves from embarrassing to legally significant territory. On its federal tax form, the 990, which is a legal document signed under penalty of perjury, Archewell checked the box stating that its finances are independently audited by an accountant. This is not a general statement of aspiration or intent. It is a specific factual certification. It says, on a legal document, that an independent audit of the organization's finances has been conducted and exists. CharityWatch asked to see it. That is their job. It is the single most important document a charity can produce for a watchdog review, because it is the independent verification that what the charity claims to be doing with its money corresponds to what the money actually did. Their first letter requesting the audit went out January 22, 2024. No response. Second letter, December 6, 2024. No response. Third letter, January 6, 2026. No response. 3 written requests. 2 years of total silence from an organization that had certified on a legal filing that the audit existed. There are only 2 explanations available for that silence. The first is that the audit is clean, complete, and sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere, and the organization chose not to produce it for CharityWatch across 3 separate written requests spanning 2 years, for no reason that can be coherently stated. That explanation does not hold up under any scrutiny. A charity trying to rebuild donor confidence after a delinquency notice and a collapsing donor base does not sit on a clean audit that would resolve the questions being asked about it. Producing a clean audit in that context costs almost nothing and buys back significant credibility. Not producing it, across 3 separate requests spanning 2 years, achieves the opposite. The second explanation is that the document does not exist in the form it was certified to exist on the legal filing. CharityWatch ultimately concluded that Archewell does not meet transparency benchmarks and was unable to assign the organization a rating. A charity that will not produce the document it certified exists, to the organization whose entire purpose is reviewing that kind of document, is not running a transparency gap. It is running a transparency strategy. And that strategy, combined with the delinquency on record, the collapsing donor base, and the restructure that was still coming, tells a specific story about which direction the organization was being managed. Now, let's go back to the delinquency and the specific date that sits right next to it in the timeline, because that juxtaposition is the most important piece of the whole story. May 3, 2024, California declares the Archewell Foundation delinquent. The official trigger is a filing issue, a check that reportedly never arrived. But state attorneys general do not pull the license to operate over a single missing envelope. unless the underlying paperwork is already in a state that makes the office uncomfortable. The delinquency is the symptom. The preceding filing history is the condition. Drop the pin 7 weeks earlier. March 14, 2024. American Riviera Orchard launches. Picture the split screen. On the left, Meghan on Instagram, flowers, honey jars, a lifestyle brand she described as an extension of herself. On the right, a shared charity with a 2-person board, a $3 million annual deficit, and a state regulator about to flag it as delinquent. Same household, same months. One project running like a serious commercial operation. Multiple product lines, coordinated launches, sold out within the hour. The other running like an afterthought. The pattern in those dates is not subtle. And then it happened again. The California registration lapsed a second time on May 15, 2025. The most recent filing the state had on record ran only through the end of 2023, 2 separate compliance failures in 2 years. The brand, meanwhile, never missed a scheduled drop. When a compliance failure repeats twice in 2 years on the same registration, in the same period when the commercial brand never missed a scheduled product drop, the pattern stops being coincidence and starts being evidence of where the operational attention actually was. Now let's talk about James Holt, because the human layer of this story matters as much as the documents. Holt was there from the very beginning. He was at Windsor on the wedding day in May 2018, managing the logistics of one of the most globally watched ceremonial events of the decade. When Harry and Meghan made their decision to leave royal life in 2020, Holt made a decision of his own. He walked with them across an ocean to California. He helped navigate the Oprah interview, the event that changed the global conversation about the Sussexes more than anything, before or since. He helped build and run the charity through the years that followed. The public attacks, the constant media cycles, the staff turnover that had become its own running story in the royal commentary world. People who knew the operation closely said he might have been the last aide remaining who truly understood firsthand what Harry and Meghan had actually experienced inside the palace. Not from reading it in the memoir, but from having been physically present through much of it. He stayed for 7 years, through the Oprah interview and the fallout, through the Netflix documentary and the fallout, through the memoir and the fallout, through the staff departures and the financial questions and the regulatory filings and all of it. In December 2025, when the staff cuts were announced and the deficit had become a matter of public record and the foundation was being quietly restructured into something smaller and less visible, James Holt packed up and went home, back to the United Kingdom to raise his family. No tell-all interview, no statement to the press, no on-the-record account of what he had witnessed across 7 years. He simply left. And there are moments when the most significant thing a person can do is leave quietly, without explanation, after the people who needed to understand what it meant had already drawn their own conclusions. 7 years of loyalty from the man who had been there since the wedding day, ending in silence at exactly the moment when the organization he had helped build was contracting rather than expanding. He was not alone. The director of programs and operations departed in the same round of cuts. The person actually running the programmatic work on a salary of $146,000 annually, gone in the same announcement that described the organization as expanding into something bigger. The executive director gone. By various counts, more than 20 people have cycled out of the Sussex operation since it began. One royal source described the pattern with a bluntness that stuck. They churn through staff faster than normal people churn through toilet paper. People at the top of their professional fields, who had believed enough in the mission to uproot their lives for it, kept deciding they had seen enough. Then there is Dr. Sophie Chandauka at Sentabale, the charity Harry co-founded in 2006 in his mother's memory, which itself collapsed publicly in early 2025. Chandauka was not a tabloid source. She was the chairwoman of the board, the person at the actual head of the table, and her account of what she was asked to do is specific. Harry's team came to her and asked the charity to defend Meghan from bad press. Her response was on the record. "We are not setting a precedent by which we become an extension of the Sussex PR machine. An extension of the PR machine." That phrase came from the person who chaired the board of Harry's own charity. Now let's talk about the December 2025 restructure, because it is the final exhibit and arguably the most revealing. December 19th, 2025. The announcement. The Archewell Foundation is transitioning to become Archewell Philanthropies. The language in the announcement was aspirational. The couple and their children would be able to expand upon their global philanthropic endeavors as a family. The word expand appeared. Bigger ambitions, broader reach, a new chapter. The same week the announcement went out. 3 staff members cut, representing more than half the remaining workforce. The executive director, who had been there since the beginning, departed. The director of programs and operations, the person actually responsible for the programs the charity was supposed to be running, drawing a salary of $146,000 annually, gone. Donations down from $5.3 million to $2.1 million. The $3 million deficit still in the filings. The missing audit still unproduced. 2 separate California compliance failures still on the record. You do not expand by cutting more than half your staff and watching your donations contract by 60%. That is not expansion. That is a retreat, dressed in the warmest possible public language. But here is the specific detail that matters from a governance and regulatory perspective. The fiscal sponsorship model that Archewell was moving toward typically carries fewer mandatory public disclosure requirements than a standalone independent foundation. It reports less. The financial picture it presents to the outside world is less legible, less detailed, and less available for public scrutiny than the structure it was replacing. At the exact moment the scrutiny was at its highest, a documented public deficit, 3 unanswered letters from CharityWatch spanning 2 years, a delinquency on the California record, a second lapsed registration in 2025, and ongoing questions about the relationship between the charity's activities and the commercial brand's activities. The organization restructured into a form that requires less public disclosure. That is not the kind of move that makes a regulator comfortable. That is the kind of move that makes a regulator lean in and look harder. The language in the announcement framed everything as family. A family expanding its philanthropic work. Family is private. Family is personal. Family, the framing implies, operates in a space that strangers should not enter with questions about where the money went. Except that the money the public donated to the Archewell Foundation was not family money. It was money given in trust for charitable purposes. The people who gave it are entitled to a transparent account of where it went. The fiscal sponsorship pivot does not resolve that obligation. It obscures it by putting the financial activity into a structure that reports less publicly, requires fewer disclosures, and presents a less legible picture to anyone trying to understand where the money is going. And regulators, when they look at the timeline, the delinquency, the missing audit, the staff departures, the collapsing donor base, and then the restructure into a less transparent form, do not find that sequence reassuring. Pull back now and look at the full picture. Because the pattern in these dates, when you lay them out in sequence, is specific and visible without any interpretive assistance. March 14, 2024. Brand launches. May 3, 2024. Charity declared delinquent. 2024. $3 million deficit. 2025. California registration lapses a second time. May 2025. Brand never missed a launch. December 2025. Charity restructured into a less transparent form while brand continues operating on schedule. The charity took every regulatory hit. The delinquency. The missing audit. The staff departures. The collapsing donor base. The restructure into something smaller and dimmer. Every compliance failure. Every public accounting of where the money went and did not go. Every question about governance and transparency. All of it attached to the shared operation. And through all of it, the brand kept moving. American Riviera Orchard became as ever. Products launched, sold out. New lines dropped on schedule. The Instagram presence stayed warm, aspirational, and completely visually separated from the paperwork that was accumulating on the other side of the household's financial picture. One of these two things was run like a serious commercial operation, with focused attention, coordinated launches, and the kind of consistent execution that commercial success requires. The other was run like something whose governance questions could be managed quietly in the background until they could not be. The dates in the documents tell you which was which, without requiring anyone's opinion to interpret them. There is also a reputational dimension to this that matters commercially, not just charitably. A reputation is a form of financial collateral. When the charity side of an operation is generating headlines about delinquent filings, missing audits, and collapsing donor confidence, the commercial side of the same operation cannot borrow against that reputation anymore. The Netflix investment in the As Ever brand was pulled in March 2026, the same period when the regulatory and financial picture of the shared household was most clearly in public view. Whether the two developments were causally connected is a question that only the people inside the Netflix investment conversations can answer definitively. But the timing sits in the timeline, and the timeline is the document. The filings are public, the dates are documented, the 3 CharityWatch letters are on the record, the California delinquency notice is on the record, James Holt's departure is on the record, Dr. Chandauka's statement is on the record, Rachel Maxwell's contracts research is on the record, Brian Glicklick's assessment is on the record. None of this requires a palace source or an anonymous briefing or a hostile journalist with an agenda. It requires reading the documents that the organizations themselves filed with the relevant authorities and asking what the dates and the numbers in those documents actually say when you read them in sequence rather than in isolation. The charity was delinquent in May 2024. The brand launched in March 2024. The registration lapsed again in May 2025. The brand never missed a launch window. The restructure came in December 2025 into a less transparent form at the moment of peak scrutiny. These are dates and documents. They do not require interpretation to be legible. Paperwork does not have an agenda. It does not cry on television or give interviews. It does not have feelings about the monarchy or about California or about what anyone's future should look like. It does not have feelings about the monarchy or about California or about what the future should look like. It just has dates and numbers and boxes that were checked and documents that were requested and produced or were not. And in this case, the dates and the numbers and the missing documents and the boxes that were checked on legal filings and the documents that were requested 3 times and not produced. They tell a story that is considerably more interesting than anything the press releases on either side of this have described. Not because they prove malice or intent, but because they show in the documented record a pattern of where the attention and the energy and the serious operational management was going, and where it was not. That is the story the dates tell. What part of this timeline do you find most significant? The 2-person governance structure that had no independent oversight, the missing audit that was certified to exist on a legal filing and then not produced across 3 written requests, or the restructure into a less transparent form at the moment of peak scrutiny? These are not rhetorical questions. They have different answers depending on what lens you bring to the documents. Drop your analysis in the comments below. This story rewards detail, and the comment section is usually better informed than most. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you never miss what we cover next. And if this kind of documented breakdown is what you come here for, the like button is how we keep doing it. Until the next one.